analogy because when Jesus is talking about, what? The wise man is the one who builds his home upon the rock, the foundation. Oh, that takes on a whole different slant, doesn't it? Whoa, now we're not talking about a rock foundation. We're talking about what's the foundation that your family is built on. What is the foundation that your family from generations back has been built on? And that's what Jesus is saying. He who hears my words, that is going to become the foundation of what you will build your life, and you will take it home and you will build your family's life upon. So we're going to look from Psalms 18. Actually, Psalm 61 was our call to worship. In Psalms 18, verse 1 is, I love you, Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. And hear the words from Jesus in Matthew chapter 7. He says, everyone who hears these words of mine and does them will be like the wise man who builds his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like the foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rains fell, and the floods came up, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell. And great was the fall of it. Thus ends the reading. Thanks be to God. Well, how many here as a kid in Sunday school ever sang that song? The wise man built his house upon the rock. The wise man built his house upon the rock. The wise man built his house upon the rock, and the rain came tumbling down. Yeah, and what happened when when the foolish man built his house on the sand? Yeah, it fell flat. So as a kid, you learned about that in Sunday school, right? The song, and what was that teaching you? What was it all about? The fun gestures of building a house and rains? Kind of had rains today. It was Jesus' parable of what he was trying to get across. And and I look at some of those scriptures, and I think, isn't it interesting how some of them we're supposed to take literal, but as you really look at that scripture in Matthew, we want to take that sometimes maybe too literal. My husband's a contractor, and so when you read that, you think of what? Houses. You think of foundations. Well, we know that as a contractor, if that foundation is not solid, what's going to happen to that house? Right? If you even have a slab home and you don't have a basement dug, if that is not on a solid foundation, what will happen to that slab?
It'll heave, it'll sink, it'll crack, it'll break. And what'll happen to the house then? Yeah, we know exactly what happened. It won't stay standing and it will not stay firm. Well, coming now not from a contractor's perspective, but Jesus spoke in parables, and he spoke in ways of what people knew, right? They knew, they understood that with houses, because in Israel, it's a very small area. Like I said, if you take up all of Israel and you shove it all in, the whole United States as far as terrain, from the prairies to the desert to the Rocky Mountains to the East Coast, and you cram all that into the size of the state of New Jersey. That's how big Israel is. But they have everything that we have here, just condensed. So they knew what he meant about building your house upon the rock, because they had the rock, and they also knew what it meant about building your house upon the sand, because they had a lot of sand. So when Jesus spoke that way, they could understand that part. But that's not what he was getting at. He said, it's like. Whenever Jesus used the parables, he always started with, the kingdom of heaven is like. The love of the Father is like. Hearing my words is like. So he was comparing something that they could understand, they could see with their eyes, they knew what was going on, but he was taking it into a different direction. It was no longer the literal interpretations of what was going on. We looked at 2 weeks ago when I was here. It was what? It was all about the rules. That was the literal thing, the rules, and they were so bogged down in the rules and the extra rules that the Pharisees had put on them that they lost sight of the big picture. And I think sometimes that's what we do. Jesus broke it down so simple into just 2, but it encompassed all those rules. But he made it easier. When Jesus spoke in parables to the people, it was stuff that they could understand. A shepherd understood about the lost sheep. The woman who wove the blankets, she understood about those parables. The one with the lost coin, they knew how valuable that one coin was. It was a matter of eating or not eating, or paying taxes or not having a house, or losing your child because of the taxes. They understood those things. Jesus took that, what they knew, and then he tried to describe the kingdom of heaven, or he tried to describe the love of God. Now, this is one little thing that a lot of people miss. Jesus said, some are going to get this, and some aren't. And that's okay. See, God reveals different aspects in your life individually at different points in your life. But he doesn't always reveal everything all at once. If you did, you couldn't handle it all. You couldn't remember it all. Perfect example of that was getting ready for this Coke ministry, right? And that was my terrible, because I told Pat, yeah, I'll do this registration form, and I had full intentions of doing that, but that was what, on Thursday? This is Sunday. And between everything, get ready for the magic show, do you think that was even anywhere on the top 14 of my list? Totally forgot about it until she said this morning, did you bring it? No. Thankfully, she was gracious enough to do that for me. But that's my point. Our brains can't handle everything all the time. Even though we may like to think we can, we can't. Jesus brings that which is so big, and he simplifies it down, and he gives you just what you need to know at that point in time, because 1, you can either remember it, or 2, it's what's going to be pertinent. We're talking about the rock and how that all got changed. Originally, I was going to go in a whole different direction. And the FCC, they're doing a big thing with their kids, and they're painting rocks. And that all came from, if you were here at the outdoor service, when we did the pet blessing, Linda brought her pet rock that she was putting in front of the rock garden. Yeah, and so that's kind of where that all spurred. So I was thinking about rocks, and I was thinking about foundation. And see, Jesus told that parable at the beginning because they understood about building a solid foundation, but then he was talking to his disciples who understood the next movement. Because it was Peter. We talk about the transfiguration. We talk about in front of the Mount Hermon, there at the Temple of Pan, when Jesus asked Peter, "Who do people say I am?" And he said, some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, some say a prophet, some say a teacher. And he says, but who do you say I am? And Peter equivocally said, you are the Son of God. You are the Messiah. And Jesus says, blessed are you, Peter, because you couldn't have known this by man. It was only by God. And then he says something else. He says, upon this rock I will what? I will build my church. Now he's talking twofold. One, he's talking to Peter, and that's why Peter's name gets changed from Simon, Cephas, Peter, which means rock. He's talking about the new journey that Peter was going to be on, but he was also talking about where they were at. They were at the Mount Hermon, and this is why this is kind of interesting and funny at the same time. You know, we squabble about our ideologies and territory. They did that way back when. You have the whole overarching Bible is between two mountains. Mount Hermon is where the fallen angels came, and Mount Zion, which is Jerusalem, is God's mountain. And so you have this constant war between the two mountains. Well, then you throw in Samaria. We talked about the Good Samaritan, the woman at the well. We just talked about her. And what was the big fight there? They believed their mountain was where the temple was at, and the Jews believed that Mount Zion was where the temple was at. So you had these whole two warring tribes over what? Where they worshiped God. It wasn't over which God they worshiped. They were fighting over where we worship God. They were missing the point. They were both built on rocks, weren't they? But the foundation was still God. It didn't matter where that foundation was plopped. And when Jesus says this to Peter, he's saying at quote-unquote the enemy's mountain, upon this rock, he's talking about Peter, but he's also talking about place. I'm going to build my church. You talk about a slam in the enemy's face. It's mine, I've conquered it. I'm building my church here. The scriptures are full of all these fun little tidbits and these nuggets, and when you dig into it, you find that the word rock means so much in so many circumstances to so many people. Just like foundation means so much to so many people. Whether we're worrying about my foundation is the right foundation physically, or if we're worrying about our religious foundation is the right foundation. Or if Jesus was talking about, you are going to be my rock. You are going to be my foundation that I'm going to not just build, but continue to increase my church upon. And that foundation is going to continue for generation to generation to generation. What if Peter would have said, I'm a fisherman, I'm not a stonecutter, I'm not a mason. What do you mean? If he was thinking completely in the literal, when Jesus said, upon this foundation, upon you, I'm going to build my church. If he'd said, well, that's not going to happen, he didn't. God not only revealed to him at that moment that Jesus was the Christ to proclaim to all, but he also revealed in his heart at that time that we're no longer talking about physical stuff. We're talking about the spiritual. So my question to you is, what is your foundation built on? If you have spent so much time and energy and money on making sure that your house foundation is solid, has anybody ever had to call thrashers? Or has anybody ever had to fix their foundation because of maybe too much water or bad gutters or bad slope outside? And what happened to the walls? Especially if you have block walls as opposed to port walls, they start to what? Cave in. And when you call thrashers, what do? They come in with reinforcements and they push that back. And they make it solid again and square. See, that's what the world's doing to us as Christians. It's trying to put pressure on the outside to try to cave that foundation of what we believe, to cave that foundation of Christ. But when we read our scriptures, when we come to church, when we fellowship with one another, what does that do? That's those rebar those steel beams. It's the reinforcement that holds those walls upright and straight again and reminds us that our foundation is solid. What kind of legacy are you leaving for the next generations? What kind of foundation have you set? And when people come to your house, are they coming to just see your house? Or are they coming to see your home? You could probably remember as a kid growing up, you had those homes that you liked to go and visit quite frequently. You had those friends that you were just drawn to because that was the fun house, right? It wasn't just because of games, it was because of the atmosphere. Am I right? It was because of the people. I have done so many funerals for people that I didn't even know, and the stories that would flood in, and it was always, they were the mom or they were the dad who everybody came to their house. They were the ones where everybody congregated. They were the ones that made everybody feel welcome. They were the ones that didn't judge you, they just loved on you. They were the ones when you had a bad day and you didn't think you could go home to your folks, you could go home and talk to them first. Are people going to talk about you like that at your funeral? Are people talking about you like that now? Were you or are you the home that people want to congregate to? And if so, why is it? What is it that's the attraction? That's the next key thing. Is it because of the foundation that your family is sitting on? Is it because that you are showing and emulating the love of Christ? Is it because you're welcoming to everybody? Is it because you're setting that godly example that says to people, our home is built on the solid foundation of Jesus Christ? And let me tell you why.